and welcome to NONI, Yanga's flagship talk show where we discuss the topics that you, our viewers at home, are talking about, but just a little bit louder. I am Esther Alade, and today I'll be asking my guest if your company needs a head of diversity. Are they basically racist? So, who are my guests today? Well, joining me are journalist and the founder director of the British Blacklist, Queer Jam Free, business management consultant Jimmy Asuni, and presenter Tosin Yusuf. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Loving the coordination of the green and a red in the middle. Looking lovely. So, the biggest and best companies employ the biggest and best brains. So when you discover reports that show companies that execute a diversification policy are up to 70% more productive, you have to ask, why has the practice taken so long? Sadly, we assume that there can only be one explanation. The default in business has been to favor employment of white, heterosexual men over everybody else. So when we hear companies have a head of diversity, should we be glad and infused? Or is their very existence confirmation that the company has a problem in this area? Question to you guys. What are your thoughts? Akra.
You going with me first?
Yes.
I think we can't blanket every organisation as being absolutely racist because they don't have a diverse team. However, there's a lot of ignorance. I mean, there are racist organisations and then there's organisations that have been ignorant, and I think especially in 2019 there's no room for your organisation to be all white, especially if it's an organisation that serves the wider community and they expect service from everybody. If it's something that's selling to white middle class men, then fine, that's your team.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's, but at least there's a better reason for it than saying something that's open to all and your whole team doesn't reflect the people that you want to buy for your product.
Okay, so if your customers are diversely mixed, then you should have a diverse...
At the very least.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And what are your thoughts, Tosin? What do you think?
I mean, creating a diversity department is a step in the right direction, but I feel like in 2019, diversity is trending. So a lot of companies are starting to realize that diversity sells. So you see ad campaigns and you see like fashion companies and all of that doing collaboration with people of color and all of that just to show, hey, we're diverse. But when you go into these companies, there are still 95% white people in that they employ. That you can barely see people of color there. So having a diversity department is definitely a step in the right direction because it would control the institutional part of the whole thing.
Okay.
But I mean, you have to think about the fact that a lot of companies don't really care about being diverse. They just want to sell stuff. So think about having the department in your company would help. Do you think that's an assumption that we're thinking that they don't care about diversity? I mean, it just shows, if you go into a company and everyone's white, everyone beside me is white, and they sprinkle a little black person, one here, there, then it just shows that you don't really care. You can't tell me that they're not black people or people of color that qualify for these positions. Why is everyone white? Why am I the only black person in this department? So you need to think about it. It might be an unconscious bias, but it's something that the departments need to look into. And Jimmy, what are your thoughts?
I do agree with the unconscious bias kind of thing because I work in the financial sector. Yes. I do feel like there's an unconscious bias thing going on behind the screen where there's a tendency to want to
favor people that look like you.
To get people that look more like you. Yeah. And then they're not conscious of what they're doing. I think in the year 2019, like you rightfully said, they should be more aware of things like that happening in different organizations. If that's what's happening in the organization.
Could it be fair to say that because I said historically maybe companies are used to having people who look like themselves because people are used to employing people like themselves. So that could be if we were to flip it around, we could say for black companies as well. Some black companies only hire maybe black people. You tend to hire people like yourselves.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Shade Room, but I saw something on the Shade Room in America, and there's this man that started a company where he said he's only going to hire black people, and everyone's in the comments like, yes, for black people, let's go. But I'm like, that's not the solution. That's not what we need to do. We need to target these companies that already, have that unconscious bias. So listen, we're diverse. There are different races. There's people of different sexual orientations. All of that. Everyone needs to be incorporated. We're not just one. It's not a white world. So you need to understand that.
Basically, if you look at the result of companies that have a mixed setting, they do better financially. They do better productivity wise. They are more able to open their business to different segments of the society in which they are in. Does that make any sense?
So let's talk about you, for instance. You obviously you have a disability. Do you mind elaborating a bit more about your disability and how you have come into Lloyds Banking?
So I have cerebral palsy. It's a condition that affects your fine motor movement, and then it can affect your speech. I've seen very severe cerebral palsy guys, and basically they can't do anything. Like, they need someone to help them do stuff. But I'm on the lucky side because I can still live a very independent life. My journey into the bank was very hard, I must say. I started by trying to apply through the normal route, but I didn't get a shot. And one of the interviews I will never forget in my life was, it was with, I'm not going to mention the financial institution, but I'll just say it was a financial institution, and I'd gone to the interview, passed the interview stage, and the lady I was talking to actually took me to the room with my so-called team, in quote and unquote, that I'll be working with when I start the job. So I thought, I've gotten the job, not realizing, nah. So 2 weeks after that, I got a letter in the post telling me, oh, you were not successful. Obviously, as a person of color, you start to play in your mind, like, why didn't I get the job? The thing is, I feel like my disability has sort of helped me become the person I am today. Because if not for the disability, I doubt I'd have gotten a shot into the bank to get into the banking sector, which I'm in right now. It took me a lot of. I can remember how I got the job. I went to a disability program, and that's how I got the job basically. It was a 2-week program, and I did really well on the program, and that's why they offered me the permanent role. That's very well done to you. So obviously we have a diverse panel here as we're sitting, 2 women, yourself, and has it been difficult for you guys overall in terms of finding work in general? I think you're just newly qualified, so you're just graduating, you're going into the world of work, but what are your perceptions? Obviously, I think for you, for this, sorry to jump in, but in terms of your generation, I think it might be a lot easier because, as you said, diversity is on the rise. So do you feel optimistic?
I mean, I'm still a bit scared when I send in my application stuff because my name is a bit of a tongue twister. I'm African, so sometimes I feel like they just look at my CV and they're like, I can't even pronounce this name. She probably is a freshie, can't even speak English, probably don't understand her accent and all of that. So sometimes I see that I find like I shorten my name just to be more appealing. But yeah, I definitely feel that kind of way sometimes. Okay,
I can say to you, I work in HR as my background. I did have a manager who would literally dismiss CVs if you couldn't pronounce the names. And also you had age discrimination back then, but now you can't put your age on the CV, so people also been discriminated against by their age as well. But with you, Aqua, you tell me about your background. How?
I mean, I think I've been blessed because I've worked in the creative industry from when I left college. So I worked in hairdressing, so that's freedom. It's not really regulated by race because I worked in a black salon specifically. So no problems there. Going into study journalism and then working at the BBC, my first application to the BBC, I got the job. So I had an extensive career at the BBC. Now, I've always worked in the creative fields. I haven't worked in the corporate fields of BBC. And because I've always had my own personal businesses outside of working in the BBC, I haven't had to worry about necessarily going for that corporate managerial position. So I don't know if ever I was to try, I would have met any resistance at that point. And that's not to say of the BBC as an organisation. In general, I haven't had to do that because I've been a manager in my own world. So I haven't actually had a problem in that respect. Going back to saying about when you were saying about all black organisations and hiring black, that not being the solution, it's a solution for us because we're facing problems in the mainstream industry, because the mainstream industry, if you feel like you're hitting that wall, that glass ceiling, as they say, and you're not getting promoted, black people, we're quite entrepreneurial. We go off and create our own businesses.
Which is great, but the criticism is that if we're employing people like ourselves as well, we're not having a diverse workforce.
But I think we're more
black people are getting jobs. Well, that's not going to solve the problem.
No, I think we are. We don't avoid diversifying organisations that we want to be a part of.
No.
I don't think that's the solution. That we don't go for those applications, and when you're in there, you don't have critical conversations that affect change in the workplace. However, if we're creating our own businesses and hiring our own, I have no problem with that. And I think generally, black people in general, we're more accommodating and welcoming anyway.
We assume so. But okay, let's go on a short break. And when we come back, I'll be asking my panel, how should we as black people react to the idea of quotas and box ticking? Should we demand to be treated equally in all circumstances, or should we understand that any advantage we are given is simply readdressing the balance of a system that has been steadfastly set up against us? See you after the break. Welcome back to NONI with me, Esther Alade, and my guests are Queer Jamfree and Jimmy Asuni and Tosin Yusuf. So the question we were discussing before the break was, if a company needs a diversity policy, are they basically racist? And now I want to ask my panel, how do we achieve inclusiveness without resorting to box ticking? How do we do that? Because we were talking earlier on about you working for the BBC, and do you think part of it may be because they had to ensure a box was being ticked? There are not many black people who go into the media industry, for example.
Well, to separate, I can't speak for the BBC and why I was hired at that time, but I think in the general scheme of things, yes, there's a lot of, because I work in the creative field with the British Blacklist, and that's one of the key things that we talk about, representation on screen, on stage, literature, those areas of the arts, about making sure there are enough people of colour being represented in these wide spaces. So there is an element of how do we get organisations to stop hiring as they have done traditionally, you know, as they do, and how to include more other people. So there has to be some schemes and initiatives. As Jimmy said, if he didn't go on the disability scheme, he might not have entered into the banking field. It's the same thing with getting into media, getting into the arts. Sometimes schemes are there to help get people in. So it could look like quotas and box ticking. However, if they're going to hire people of colour and they're incompetent for the job, then that's box ticking. If you are good at your job and you're hired, but you just needed that extra push to get in because the organisation is routinely not hiring diversely, then to me it's not a problem. But ensure that when you're going in and the people that are hiring you are hiring you on your credentials, not because they want to push you as the person of colour to make their organisation look good.
Makes sense.
I mean, you could get hired because you're qualified for the job, but it could still be tokenism.
At that point it is tokenism and it is quota filling. But it's then if you're good for the job, because if you, let's do very basics, if you got a D and then the other person got an A and they're hiring the D because they want to make sure that they're box ticking and filling quotas and having a token there, that's a problem. However, if you're both got A's and they're like, look, we have a problem in our organisation, let's put the diverse A through. I know the white A might feel a problem. I've recently had that conversation with a white colleague who's like, you know, he himself has been told, unfortunately, you're not of colour, so we can't hire you in this position. And he said he's been facing that a lot. So that's creating another problem with maybe especially working class white people who are feeling marginalised, that's creating division. However, on the basis of that, if your organisation's got a problem, this is what we need to do.
Do you think that's irresponsible of a company to have actually informed him of that?
Yes. Because it's
they
creating the tension that we're in now, racial tension across the western side of the world. We're having real race problems that are causing issues in the real world, and it's irresponsible to have that, to say that to somebody.
Yeah. Because you made a point to us, and you said diversity is now in. It's like we're a trend.
Yeah.
So I think people are assuming because it's now a trend, then you're more likely to get the job if another person who was supposedly white is better than you. But because we're creating a diverse world and we want more inclusion, you're going to get that job.
I mean, if you're a beneficiary of tokenism, that's great for you. Good, you got the job. That's good. But I feel like having like a diverse department or something like that, it's not just going to help. People need to be more vocal about it. If you're lucky enough to get a job because of tokenism, great. But say something. If you're in a workplace and you're surrounded by 95% of people working in your company are white, why can't you say so? Why am I the only black person in the department? If you're lucky enough to be in a management position, say something about it. Why don't we hire new people? Why is it every new person that comes in is some John or some occasional Sallys? Where are the Tundes? Where are the Tosins? What's going on? So I think everyone needs to be a bit more vocal about it.
I can answer that question, because if you go ahead and start challenging things, it's either they show you the door, or I'm being practical here. It's either they show you the door, or they make your life a miserable hell. Simple as.
But it would never change if everyone's trying to tiptoe around them, so you don't rock the boat because I got the job.
Let's say
crazy.
All three of you are black, right? And then what if you were to be chosen based on your sexuality, for example? And that's the tick box, because we want a diverse. I'm
going to say it's the same thing. It's all, whatever ism or marginalised group you come from, it is the same thing. But for me, it's about whether you can do the job. And I think there are a lot more vocal people in the workplace of colour, of other groups that are speaking up and saying, look, this is not good. There are definitely more groups speaking up.
But I think when you speak up, you need to find a solution.
But you have to be careful.
Yeah, and also be careful, because for a while when I was in banking, I was the only black girl in HR. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? And also you have this perception of, I can't be that angry black woman.
Of course.
I have to, conduct myself in a certain way because there's preconceived ideas about who I am.
You just have to be smart about your approach, really.
Yeah. So like being a black disabled man is more a two-ticker for me to actually say, okay, I've got disability, but I've also got brains in my head, so I can think as well as I can get the job done without me thinking, oh, I'm a black man or I'm a disabled man. So it's for me, it's more about being able to deliver the job that you're being told to do. Simple as. I mean, once I can deliver it, I might need some extra help to get it delivered. But once I can deliver the job, then
you're fine.
I should be hired to do the job.
Okay, so when we talk about it, is it not just common sense to hire people who look like society, right? People who can do the job. Let's get people in and hire them because we're representing a worldwide, or people who look like us, kind of thing. So
I think it's common sense. People aren't always aware. And like we've all said, in this day and age, you should not be a major organisation especially and not be aware. And I think if you're going to also create a diversity department and hire someone to help you with that, that's another thing. Where don't just have a token person saying, well, we've got a D&I department, so that covers our back when people come and criticise us, because sometimes people are hired in those positions and they have no power. They can't do a thing.
Let's talk about facts. So facts and benefits of diversity in the workplace that may surprise you. Ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to outperform their respective national industrial mediums. Despite this, studies show that resumes submitted by those with non-white sounding names like you, Tosin Yusuf, are less likely to get a call. Are less likely to get a call back. But diverse companies are bringing in more revenue. 15 times more sales revenue than companies with the lowest level of diversity, to be more accurate, at least according to the American Sociology Review. So there are some benefits to it.
There are definitely benefits, and companies realise that. That's why a lot of campaigns now, they, you
Have
see all the
everywhere,
shades,
yeah.
because they know that it sells. In the 1970s, symphony orchestras were predominantly white men. So they did something to change this, and it was called like blind auditions, where people come to audition for the orchestra but behind the screen. So they don't know your gender, they don't know your race or anything, they don't know your sexual orientation or whatever. And after they did those auditions, 25 to 46% more women were accepted into the orchestra. And a company called Gap Jumpers did this kind of blind audition. So what they did was assign like anonymous tasks and tests to applicants for jobs. And after this test, 60% more minorities were accepted for interviews than what they previously had, and they had 125% more women get accepted into jobs and positions. So you can see that unconscious bias is not really unconscious. They're looking at resumes and they're seeing your names and they're just judging you off of that. So I think that's something companies should try it.
I think the removal of names, the removal of age and gender, just
so
have the qualifications,
have a number.
and that's it. That's the better way of getting people through, but then you still have to get through to the interview process or the audition. Because in the creative arts, you have like colourblind casting. So this is and this is a different type of way of including people, where the description of the character is no longer bound by its race or gender. They were like, you can go and audition for this role, and it's whoever fits that character and fits into that world, rather than saying we need a white person, stuff like that.
Typecasting.
Because that's something companies say as well. If you ask them, why is everyone white? And they say, we're going based off qualifications, all of that. You're trying to tell me they're not educated people of colour qualified for this job. That's not just,
And as you said, in terms of people looking at names, if we remove that, then you're less likely to have
gender, remove age.
Okay, so are we saying ticking boxes, quota filling is okay? Because right now, if we're trying to ensure there's diversity within companies, then it's okay to have that.
Dependent on who you bring in and they're qualified, because even Sir Lenny Henry has been campaigning with the government to make sure there's creative organisations have a certain quota, because nothing's going to change. I can't remember the statistics, but it would take a lot of people in positions to literally die before the industry actually has an overhaul of who's in power. And so if that's not going to happen, we're not going to have a mass cull of people in power. So what's the alternative? We need companies to answer to a quota, but on that basis of that, the people that they're hiring are qualified to do the job.
And like you mentioned earlier, it's a case of ensuring systems or things are in place to encourage that. Because I know in the creative field, for example, there aren't many people of colour coming, but I think there's more people coming now, but historically, I think there haven't been many people in terms of...
It depends on the positioning. When you talk about making decisions, there aren't as many. There are a few people coming through, but there aren't as many, because these especially in the UK, most of the institutions that, the broadcasters and the platforms that are in the top tier, they're usually white-run organisations. So there's problems there. But what some organisations are doing to counter this is visibility. Like you said, the fashion campaigns, and they'll put black people there. On TV, you might say, well, there's black people everywhere. However, it's how they're portraying these black people. It's the dynamics of their family setup. At the moment, we don't have a 2.4 black family on TV, on mainstream screens, but we have them peppered into other stories. So that's all well and good for doing that, but then also some of our stories are a bit more nuanced. Where's our representation in that aspect? And also, again, behind the scenes, we need more people behind the scenes to inform better storylines. But
I'll just mention an organisation that's combating that, which is called Creative Access. So Creative Access fills a gap in the current creative landscape by helping young people from Black, Asian and other non-white minority ethnic background, as well as those with lower socioeconomic status, to secure both jobs and paid training opportunities. So those are great examples of an organisation that's showing that.
All the major creative arts organisations have something to do with diversity on their agenda. BAFTA, BFI, Creative Access. There are so many platforms and organisations that are doing that. So people are making moves, especially in the creative arts. It's about power positions now.
Okay, we can talk and talk and talk, but thank you all so much. That's it from me, Esther Alade, and my fantastic guests, Akua Jamfri and Jimmy Asuni and Tosin Yusuf. Thank you so much for joining me, and don't forget, every episode of NONI, past and present, is online at yangatv.com. So wherever you are in the world, you can see this show and other great content from Yanga. Join us again soon for more entertaining chat. Goodbye.